Martin Scorsese doesn't just make movies. He studies them, preserves them, fights for them. When he says a film matters, it's never casual. It's usually because it changed cinema language, or challenged moral comfort, or dared to be spiritually dangerous. Scorsese champions films that take risks, with violence, with faith, with character. He gravitates toward directors who see cinema as confession, stories about guilt, obsession, power, redemption that never fully arrives. These aren't just classics. They're films he has publicly praised, restored, or referenced as essential viewing. If you want to understand Scorsese, you have to understand what shaped him. These are 10 brilliant films Martin Scorsese says you must watch. Ashes and Diamonds, 1958, directed by Andrzej Wajda. Ashes and Diamonds is a post-war drama Scorsese has championed for its political intensity and moral complexity. Zbigniew Cebulski plays a resistance fighter ordered to assassinate a communist official on the last day of World War II. The mission becomes tangled in doubt, romance, and shifting allegiances. Scorsese admires the film's moral ambiguity. There are no clean heroes in ideological chaos. Wajda stages moments of violence with operatic symbolism, including the unforgettable scene of flaming vodka glasses forming a fragile memorial. Hollywood political thrillers often simplify conflict into good versus evil. Ashes and Diamonds confronts uncertainty instead. It asks what happens when war ends but moral confusion continues. Scorsese has cited it as an example of cinema grappling honestly with national trauma. Its combination of youthful rebellion and existential despair resonates deeply within his own body of work. The Leopard, 1963. Scorsese has long championed The Leopard, directed by Luchino Visconti, as one of the greatest epics ever made. Starring Burt Lancaster, the film explores the slow decay of aristocracy during the unification of Italy. What fascinates Scorsese is its patience. Visconti lingers on rituals, architecture, glances across candlelit ballrooms. The famous ballroom sequence unfolds like time itself dissolving. It's about change, political, cultural, generational, and the quiet grief of those watching their world vanish. Scorsese has admired how Visconti balances spectacle with introspection. There are lavish costumes and sweeping sets, but the emotional core remains internal. Hollywood historical dramas often rush toward dramatic turning points. The Leopard meditates instead. It asks what survival means when relevance fades. That theme echoes in many of Scorsese's own films about aging power and moral compromise. It's epic cinema without bombast, grand yet mournful, and essential for understanding the poetry of decline. Lawrence of Arabia, 1962, directed by David Lean and starring Peter O'Toole, Lawrence of Arabia represents epic filmmaking at its most immersive. Scorsese has praised Lean's command of scale and psychological nuance. The desert landscapes feel infinite, yet the drama centers on Lawrence's fractured identity. Is he hero, narcissist, or myth in motion? Lean's use of widescreen composition and patient pacing demonstrates confidence rarely seen today. Scorsese has emphasized how the film balances spectacle with character study. It doesn't simply glorify conquest. It questions ego and imperial ambition. The match cut from flame to sunrise remains one of cinema's most iconic transitions, illustrating how visual language can carry emotion. Hollywood blockbusters often overwhelm with effects. Lawrence of Arabia overwhelms with atmosphere and introspection. For Scorsese, it exemplifies how grandeur and vulnerability can coexist, a reminder that epic cinema must still be deeply human to endure. Paisan, 1946, directed by Roberto Rossellini, Paisan is one of the defining works of Italian neorealism, a movement that profoundly shaped Scorsese's worldview. The film unfolds in 6 episodic stories set during World War II, blending professional actors with non-actors and shooting on real locations scarred by conflict. Scorsese has frequently cited neorealism as foundational to his understanding of authenticity in cinema. Paisan avoids sentimentality. It observes people navigating moral confusion in the rubble of war. There are no sweeping speeches or heroic finales. Just fragile human encounters shaped by language barriers and mistrust. The rawness of its photography and the unpredictability of its structure feel almost documentary-like. You can trace its influence in Scorsese's street-level storytelling and moral ambiguity. Hollywood war films often seek catharsis or spectacle. Rossellini delivers restraint and human fragility instead. Paisan reminds viewers that cinema can witness history without romanticizing it, a principle Scorsese has carried throughout his career. The Searchers, 1956. Scorsese has praised The Searchers as one of the greatest American films ever made. Directed by John Ford and starring John Wayne, it reshaped the Western into something darker and morally conflicted. Wayne's Ethan Edwards isn't a clean hero. He's driven by obsession and racism, wandering through Monument Valley like a ghost unable to belong. Scorsese has spoken about the film's influence on Taxi Driver, especially the idea of a man consumed by a mission that isolates him from society. Ford's framing is monumental, yet the emotional core is intimate and unsettling. The famous doorway shot at the end lingers like a moral question rather than a resolution. Hollywood westerns often celebrate triumph. The Searchers leaves you uneasy about what that triumph costs. It's about loneliness, myth, and the violence embedded in national identity. Scorsese admires it because it refuses to simplify its hero, forcing audiences to confront uncomfortable truths beneath cinematic legend. Ugetsu, 1953. Scorsese has expressed deep admiration for Ugetsu, directed by Kenji Mizoguchi. Set during civil war in feudal Japan, the film blends ghostly folklore with human ambition. Its camera moves with hypnotic grace, drifting through mist and shadow as characters chase wealth and desire. Scorsese has often praised Mizoguchi's ability to stage emotion within long, fluid takes. The supernatural elements never feel sensational. They feel inevitable, like consequences unfolding quietly. Ugetsu examines greed, loyalty, and the cost of illusion with poetic restraint. Hollywood ghost stories tend to emphasize shock. Mizoguchi emphasizes sorrow. The famous boat sequence across the fog-covered lake feels suspended between worlds. Scorsese values this spiritual dimension, cinema as meditation rather than spectacle. Ugetsu proves that genre can transcend itself, becoming philosophical without losing narrative tension. Its quiet tragedy lingers long after the final frame, embodying the kind of cinematic grace Scorsese believes every filmmaker should study. The Red Shoes, 1948. Scorsese has often called The Red Shoes one of the most important films of his life. Directed by Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, this ballet melodrama explodes with color, obsession, and artistic sacrifice. The central performance by Moira Shearer captures the destructive pull of ambition, a theme Scorsese would later explore in Raging Bull and The Aviator. The 17-minute ballet sequence feels dreamlike, bending reality into pure cinematic expression. It's not just choreography. It's psychology in motion. Scorsese helped restore the film decades later, preserving its technicolor brilliance for new audiences. He has spoken about how it taught him that movies could operate like opera, heightened, emotional, overwhelming. Hollywood today rarely allows such operatic sincerity without irony. The Red Shoes believes completely in art as life and death. That intensity shaped Scorsese's entire approach to filmmaking and remains essential viewing for anyone who wants to understand cinematic obsession. The Earrings of Madame de. 1953. Scorsese has repeatedly praised The Earrings of Madame de, directed by Max Ophuls, as one of the most elegant films ever made. On the surface, it's a romantic drama about a pair of earrings passed between lovers. Beneath that simplicity lies a devastating study of vanity, passion, and consequence. Ophuls' camera glides through ballrooms and corridors with balletic precision, creating emotional momentum through movement alone. Scorsese has admired how visual style becomes narrative language. The circular structure mirrors the character's entrapment in social expectations. Hollywood melodramas often underline emotion with music and dialogue. Ophuls lets camera motion express longing and regret. The repetition of dance scenes subtly tracks the evolution of love from flirtation to tragedy. For Scorsese, this film demonstrates that sophistication and emotional power are not opposites. The Earrings of Madame de remains a masterclass in visual storytelling and romantic fatalism. Citizen Kane, 1941. Scorsese has repeatedly acknowledged Citizen Kane as a foundational text for modern filmmakers. Directed by and starring Orson Welles, the film shattered cinematic conventions with deep focus photography, fractured timelines, and bold sound design. Scorsese has spoken about studying its structure, how memory and perspective shape narrative truth. Kane isn't a linear biography. It's an investigation into identity, power, and emptiness. The technical innovations remain astonishing, but what resonates most is its moral ambiguity. Charles Foster Kane is neither villain nor hero. He's a man swallowed by ambition. Scorsese's own fascination with flawed protagonists echoes here. Hollywood studios initially resisted Welles' control, and the film's legacy grew slowly over decades. Its influence now feels immeasurable. For Scorsese, Citizen Kane proves that cinema can be formally daring and emotionally complex at the same time. It invites filmmakers to experiment boldly while confronting the cost of power, lessons Scorsese has embraced throughout his career. 8½, 1963, directed by Federico Fellini. 8½ is a film about creative paralysis that somehow feels endlessly alive. Scorsese has cited it as a revelation, proof that filmmakers could turn inward and make art about their own doubts. Marcello Mastroianni plays a director drowning in expectation, fantasy, memory, and unfinished ideas. Reality bleeds into dreams without warning. Scenes float rather than cut. There's no conventional structure guiding the audience. Instead, Fellini trusts emotion and rhythm. You can see its fingerprints all over Scorsese's work, especially in his willingness to blur memory and confession. 8½ doesn't solve the crisis of creativity. It lives inside it. Hollywood tends to dramatize artistic struggle with neat breakthroughs and triumphant premieres. Fellini offers no such clarity. The film ends ambiguously, poetically, accepting chaos as part of authorship. Scorsese has repeatedly returned to it as inspiration, calling it one of the purest expressions of cinema as personal vision. These are not casual recommendations. They are cinematic foundations. They shape the way Scorsese thinks about guilt, faith, violence, obsession, and beauty. They prove that film can be personal, operatic, political, and spiritually searching all at once. If you truly want to understand Scorsese, you have to study the masters he reveres. Because great directors are built from the films they cannot stop watching.